Hey everyone, happy Wednesday. Hope everybody is having a great week. There are three things I wanted to cover today. The first, I'll start with a question. Why is it important for New Yorkers to care about uh, Israel and or Benjamin Netanyahu? Uh, Fast answer to that question, it's not in their interest. It's not. Why does Mamdani seem to care so much about Israel over, say, China, over, say, Russia, over, say, a lot of dictators within Africa, over, say, some leaders in the South Asia Pacific region, over some leaders in the Middle East, some leaders in South America or Central America and or Central America. Why? Why is there this unique focus on Israel? I'm not going to assume that Mamdani is anti-Semitic and doesn't like Jews in general. I'm not going to make that declaration. Other people can make that declaration. I'm just going to ask the question, why is he so interested in Israel as the mayor of New York City? And do the constituents of New York City care that much about Israel, or do they care about the high cost of living, like high rent, and how much it costs to go get pizza at a pizza place in New York, or the cost that is inferred on them when they go to the local bodega and they're picking out sodas or pre-made meals? Do they care more about that stuff, or do they care about Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel? I'm going to say they probably care more about the kitchen table issues that actually affect them. Um, I will not jump to conclusions and call Zoran Mamdani uh, a Jew hater. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to let people just look at his totality of statements and the current things he's talking about and deciding are important over all others, and let you all come to your own conclusion on whether or not this guy is a piece of trash, or hey, he's just focusing on his constituents' issues. I'll leave that one up to you. I will say though, um, any local politician that comes out and determines that they have say over American foreign policy, over the federal government, should probably be looking at charges of some kind. Um, I'm just saying, uh, you know, it's not right for a governor of a state to meet with, say, the leader of a communist nation like China, um, essentially clean up all the streets, get rid of all the homeless people and the poop that's all over, say, San Diego in this case, um, just for that tiny window of this particular communist leader coming to visit and talk with this particular governor of a state. And then once that communist leader goes back to China, just lets the poop and the homeless people back on the streets. I don't think that any of these people should have that ability to do that. That is the federal government's job. Part of what we vote into, part of the reason why we vote for presidents is to enact the foreign policy that we think is important. That is not why we elect governors. That is not why we elect mayors. That is not why we elect state reps and district court judges, in some cases, if they're electable within the state that you live in. So the fact that a particular mayor of a particular city determined that he didn't have the legal authority to arrest a foreign leader who's coming to essentially the UN I mean, why is that even a conversation? Um, don't know. Don't know. And just one particular country and one particular leader over all other things. Again, I'll let the others call this individual a anti-Semite, a Jew hater. I will not do that. I'll just let his actions speak for themselves, and you can come to those conclusions. Now, yesterday, another, I would say, media narrative was effectively crushed when Mickey Sherrill, the governor of New Jersey, came out and said that 6,600 non-citizens were accidentally registered to vote under the prior administration's purview, nothing to do with her at all. And out of those 6,600 that were found, 400 people voted in local elections or just elections in general. Now, what I find interesting about this is that for the longest time, the media narrative coming from the left was illegals aren't on voter rolls, non-citizens aren't on voter rolls. Well, that was always not true because there are certain states and certain localities or certain localities within states that allow non-citizens to vote in local elections. That was always a lie. Now you could say, oh, well, illegal individuals aren't on voter rolls. Well, apparently 6,600 people were on the voter rolls in New Jersey. And of those 6,600, 444 or 400 at least have voted in prior elections and primaries. Now, the narrative seems to have shifted from, well, yeah, but they caught it. And oh, by the way, 400 people voting in a state where there are millions of votes cast is like less than a fraction of a percentage of people. That is literally shifting the goalpost. The goalpost was it's not happening, and it was never happening. Now it is, oh yeah, it's happening, but it's not that big of a deal. This is one state with a Democrat elected governor who got caught and had to come out and say something about it. They couldn't lie their way out of it. How many other Democrat governors know that this is going on, but are too afraid to actually come out and say it because of fear, because they've been in office for literally ever, that it's going to feed into the narrative, which is a coming out to be true, that non-citizens are on the voter rolls and they're voting. Now, you might say, NYC MAGA guy, it's only 400 votes. How many votes separate the winner and the loser in local elections? Most of the time, it's less than 1,000. And in a lot of the cases, it's less than 100. So I won't go out and say that all of these people were in one particular district and could have swayed the vote there. I will just let logic speak for itself. If you have illegal people on the rolls or non-citizens on the rolls, that's a problem, number one. Number two, you have non-citizens on the voter rolls by accident, and 400 of those have voted in multiple elections, including primaries. Well, we got a problem because the argument was always it's not happening. And there's no widespread voter fraud. Now, I happened to catch the CNN segment from last night where the argument was 6,000 people isn't widespread. 6,000 people in one state isn't widespread? Sure. 400 people voting in local elections that are sometimes separated by tens of votes It never needed to be widespread. And the framing was always from a federal standpoint on federal elections. Local elections are where most of the fraud is being found. And this is just a fact. It doesn't take many votes to swing local elections. This was obvious in Connecticut, where a person who worked in the clerk's office got caught stuffing the ballot box, and they had to rerun the election. That was a primary. And the only reason that got caught was because it was a primary. If it was a general election and a Democrat won, nobody would have given two S's. The Democrat who won would not have wanted to look into why there are these fraudulent votes coming in that are most definitely cast for him or her. They're just not going to do it. This is the fundamental underpinning of why there's no election fraud that's generally found. You find it in primaries because you have two people in the same party, one of which has the fraud acted on them, and the other one that's benefiting from the fraud. And there is no benefit to just letting it go because you want to win your race fair and square. Now, when you expand that out to where it's party on party, Republicans versus Democrats and independents and Green Party, and you have the winner, in this case, that's a Democrat, they're not going to investigate it. There's no incentive. The incentive structure is completely gone. You have Attorney General that's a Democrat. And by the way, this could happen in Republican-run states as well and Republican-run localities. I have no doubt that there is very similar fraud going on within certain Republican races. But again, there is no reason to investigate it. So the claim that, oh, there's never voter fraud isn't widespread and it's never convicted or it's never found when people are looking for it. It's not found because people don't want to find it. That's just a fact. And when it becomes so obvious, you have to come out and actually say something like Mickey Sherrill had to do. 6,000 people on the voter rolls that shouldn't be there in one state. We're not even talking about California. You think this isn't happening in California? You think this isn't happening in, more specifically, the cities within New York State, New York City, Albany, Buffalo, where immigrants were just sent en masse? Many more went to New York City, a state that doesn't require necessarily voter ID. I mean, I can't with this. But again, on CNN last night, they were saying, oh, it's 6,000 people, so it's not widespread. It was only 400 people that actually voted, so it's not that big of a deal. So the goalpost is shifted. This is where all the Democrats are kind of moving to now, and it is absurd. Just don't let non-citizens on your voter rolls at all. Do not pass regulations, legislation within your region that allows for non-citizens to vote. One of the biggest differentiators between being a U.S. citizen and not a U.S. citizen is our right to affect where we live because we were born and raised here. People coming from other countries that weren't born here shouldn't have the ability to dictate to us how we should be running things. It's like a guest coming over to your house for a cookout and then telling you how to make all the food and then complaining about a bunch of stuff while not leaving and then trying to convince other people that they're right and that you should do things differently. Get the F out of my house. And that's the same way I feel about the US and their involvement in elections. They should have zero say in elections. If you're a naturalized citizen, sure. You got your green card and you're here, like, sure. If you're not a citizen, an actual resident citizen of the US, you do not deserve to be on the voter rolls. And you most definitely should not be allowed on the voter rolls if you are illegal. And again, I just find it interesting that Mickey Sherrill takes no responsibility and puts it all on the previous governor. It was the previous administration. It wasn't us. Again, how many other states do you think have this same issue? Just gonna say. And the last thing, which I just found interesting, I was having this back and forth. Uh, Ryan Grimm, who I will say is a Israel hater for sure, and I would say it borderlines on just disliking Jews in general. Posted something referencing APAC because like he thinks APAC is like the worst lobby out there. Uh, just for anybody who's watching my previous videos, I put out the numbers of how much APAC puts out or contributes versus other PACs and nonprofits. APAC is not the biggest spender, but yet there's a lot of focus on it. But I happen to follow up with like, oh, it's the Jews. It's the Jews. Oh my God. It's always the Jews. And I was like, I just find it interesting that people care so much about Israel while ignoring the Ukraine-Russia war and everything that's going on there. And somebody responded back, essentially, the U.S., there's no Americans that are dying in Ukraine, and there's no civilian casualties. To which I didn't even bother just coming up with a reply of my own because it's just on its surface so ridiculous. I just went ahead and just asked Grok. I was like, are there any Americans fighting for Ukraine in the International Legion? The International Legion, for those that don't know, recruits foreign fighters from all over the world to fight for Ukraine against Russia. And just take a step back, for anybody who doesn't understand what the Ukraine-Russia war really is, it's a proxy war between essentially Europe and the US against Russia. And Ukraine is just the means, the mechanism to which that is happening. And we send in thousands of fighters to fight within this international legion because it's kind of like plausible deniability that the U.S. is providing fighters under the U.S. flag, so they go under the International Legion. At any rate, I asked, "Are there any Americans fighting for Ukraine in the International Legion? What are their estimated casualty numbers? Also, is the U.S. government providing weapons, ammunition, air defense systems, fighter jets, and financial aid to Ukraine? How would it compare to what's been provided to Israel?" Grok's answer comes back, yes, some Americans have volunteered for the Ukraine International Legion, although the U.S. government discourages it. Confirmed U.S. deaths fighting for Ukraine have been over 90, with some reports citing 200 plus. Now, the one thing I forgot to add in my question was, are we also providing intelligence? And I'll get back to that via our intelligence services. The U.S. has supplied Ukraine with weapons, ammunition, air defense systems like Patriots, and financial aid and support for aircraft transfers. So we don't give aircraft directly to Ukraine. We give it to Poland, who then gives it to Ukraine because it's just dumb. Total related U.S. spending since 2022, when this war began, is $195 billion. U.S. aid to Israel includes steady annual security assistance of $3.8 billion, plus supplements. Ukraine aid has been far larger in scale during this war. And so the reason why I talk about that is just because there are channels, again, that focus on Israel to no end and ignore everything else. And part of it is, I could go conspiracy hat and say that there is a concerted effort from foreign entities to influence online conversation and to buy up ads that are aligned to this conversation, which then both feeds the visibility of that conversation over others because the advertising dollars are more. It also creates a sense that this is worth talking about. I don't spend really any time talking about Israel. I don't care about Israel. I find the entire conversation around Israel annoying. I also don't talk about Ukraine that much either. Again, my focus tends to be on America's interests and how it aligns back home. I have talked about the Iran war, never really in a good light. Don't think it should be happening, but I understand kind of the underpinnings of why it's happening and ultimately how that conflict actually does correlate directly back to the U.S. and and our kind of fight with China over being the superpower, which is very important to the way we live our lives, as well as control over oil. And so I can directly see how the Iran war could be beneficial for the U.S. Ukraine and Russia don't care. Israel against Hamas in Gaza, don't care, don't care. But to the extent that people talk about it over all other things and ignore the Russia-Ukraine war, or say an actual potential genocide against Uyghurs in China, like, there are real things happening out there. I just find it very interesting. And the US involvement in Ukraine is extensive. Extensive. The State Department is in there. And a lot of people equate the State Department to the CIA, which, if you watch any Tyler Sheridan show, or you've watched The Agency, or you've watched any TV that's ever been created on the CIA and the State Department, they're always linked. And a lot of those stories are coming from former CIA officers and former State Department officials that are actually writing the plots of those stories. And so I know for a fact that the State Department is constantly in Ukraine. The State Department's in a lot of places that you wouldn't expect them. The CIA is in a lot of places that you wouldn't expect them, on the front lines of a lot of interventions where they have relative plausible deniability. That's all I'll say on that. But we are providing significantly more funding and support to the Ukraine war than people understand. And it's significantly more than we're providing to Israel for their current conflict against Hamas and their other conflict in Lebanon against Hezbollah. And so I just don't have time for these people that are all about Israel because the facts just don't align with reality on those cases. But as always, tell me what you think in the comments section below. Am I off regarding Mamdani? What do you think? Why does he seem to care so much about Benjamin Netanyahu? Let me know in the comments section below. And not just about Benjamin Netanyahu, but over, say, Uyghurs in China or Muslim extremism in Africa, which is killing large populations of innocent civilians, trying to essentially genocide people out of existence. Why? Why just Israel? I'm interested to know in the comments section below. About voter fraud, do you think it's not a big deal that 6,000 people were found to be non-citizens on voter rolls due to an accident at the DMV, and that 400 of them voted in elections, potentially swaying local elections, potentially, allegedly? Do you think The Israel thing is annoying. Why should people care about Israel over, or the Israel conflict over, say, the Ukraine-Russia war, which is consuming more US dollars and assets? Let me know in the comments section below. And as always, keep believing that the best is still ahead for America. Peace out.